Today we're going to bury my dad's ashes, Dale Otto Remling. He was my stepfather, but basically he was the greatest influence in my life. I cleared off now we're dealing with digging the hole for his ashes. I'm going to go over here and get some stuff. I was out of the air for a little bit. We're going to look back this way there, over there, all the way down. We live right up that way. You can actually see our house from here if you knew where exactly it was. There's Boundary Montgomery Peak there. Now, I know there's a lot of wind noise in here, so that'll be a little difficult. Now, I have a funeral plot here also. My dad's right here. There's my dad's just 10 feet from mine. This is my grandfather, Louis Lucci. Amadeo Lucci is my step-grandfather. This is his shovel. irrigator shovel. Buried my dad's ashes above Bakersfield off Breckenridge Road at his request, the most of them. But I kept some in the original box with his name on it. I'm going to get a headstone. He was in the Merchant Marines, so I don't know whether I can get him a military headstone or not. My friend, a lifelong friend from the West, my dad's age, wasn't the Merchant Dale. Dale was one of the most talented men I ever knew in my life, and I just thought the world of him. He was in a lot of trouble in his life. He was a architect, a writer. He was a stuntman in the movies and Extra with Slim Pickens and Bonnie Montana and many others. He was I believe a double for Dale Robertson, which was Fury. They looked a lot alike. When you're burying active, you don't have to bury them very deep. Not like a casket. I believe it was. Which is way down south in the valley, about as far as you can go almost. Honor my dad and bury him. I think people ought to be buried someplace. I don't have all of his ashes, but his name will be on this grave. This is where it'll be. See if I can dig that a little deeper with the auger without hurting myself anymore. years in the world. In the 1940s, he was world champion pommel bull rider. Walking sand, Slim Pickens saved his life. A bull had gored him after he rode it, and was carrying him around the arena with a horn all the way through his body. And they saved his life. He wrote the movie Smokey that was made 2 different times. He didn't get credit for it. He sold the credits and everything for it. But the story was about him. The criminal prisoner that was trying to make it good found his horse that he loved. A wild horse named Smokey. He was an architect, and Buckhorn was the last house he lived in. Dale, Dad did the blueprints for it. He was actually, my dad was Buckhorn's uncle, and his wife Phillips originally. The last child that she had, Phillips had, was Johnny Dale. She named him with him. my dad's ashes right there. It says Dale Otto Remling on it. He died in July of 1999. His birthday was always on July the 4th, except I think he was actually born on July the 16th. But he always liked that July the 4th, the firecracker. Roman candle. So there's my dad's ashes right there. How can I get up? I'm 2 years older than my dad when he died. He smoked Camel cigarettes all his life, and that's basically what got him with lung cancer. Section 2 and gravesite number 10. Over that propane and oxygen deprivation and stuff. I wanted to get this done before it's too late. Doing a lot of work here renovating this. Get those bushes out of the way before I could bury them. Get a rake and rake that up a little bit. Take this auger back while I'm at it. Later, Lord willing, and I'll put a little fence around like that around his grave side here. Dad's either with you or isn't. I do believe from his profession of faith that he was saved the last part of his life, going from an atheist into a believer. You know, Father, the one thing that they ask him all the time, what good thing did you do in your life, Dale? He said, I raised Jimmy. And I thank you that you brought him into my life, and I buried him here where he brought me in this beautiful country. Please forgive me where I failed you. Watch over us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Gives me a little bit of closure on this. Burying him here like this. Thank you. Terry and all of you. If you watch this video, maybe you can come up here and I'm going to have a headstone here on the grave right here. And Lord willing, thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking part in this. I'm going to walk up here for Maryland's benefit, also with yours. Better. I've had a time with that. I haven't been able to preach as much as I could before the last few weeks. Thank you for all your prayers and your love. God bless you. Today I buried my dad for the last time. I buried him in 1999 in July, part of his ashes. We did a memorial service at his sister Edna's, where she lived in a mobile home park, and his mother was there also before that time. Anyway, Dale meant a lot to me. My dad did. He was born in 1928. His date that he was born is debatable. On the back of his baby picture, which is on the internet, which came from me, every picture about Dale is on the internet, came from my website originally. His birthday is July the 4th, 1928, but I believe he was born on July the 16th, 1928. He grew up in Nebraska. He grew up in Oklahoma and Texas, and in Bakersfield, near Bakersfield, California. His father was a dairyman. His mother, Alice, was a wonderful lady, Grandma Remling. She was born in 1891. She died in 1990. Otto Remling, which I didn't know, I never met him. He died just before my mother and Dale got together in 1953. Anyway, Otto William Remling died in 1952, 1878 to 1952. Dale died July the 15th in 1999, and if his birthday was really July the 16th, then he died one day short of his 71st birthday. He died of lung cancer. He smoked Camel cigarettes all his life. He had a Otto and Alice were his mother and father. Had a brother, Raymond Elijah Remling, 1908-1957. Mildred Remling Buford. Now, Mildred Buford had two children, Billy and Phyllis. Phyllis Buford married Buck Owens. She had Terry and Jackie, and her last child is Johnny Dale, named after my dad. When we moved up here to Fish Lake Valley, Mildred came and stayed with us and her husband at that time. Quite a little while, I think about 2 weeks or so. He had a brother named Earl, which I met. Earl was a gold miner, and I believe, if I remember right, that this is a long time ago, he mined for gold in Alaska. Merle Edward Remling was his brother that died the same year that he was born. Edna Frances Remling Pope. Now, Edna came and stayed with us up here in Fish Lake Valley also with Jim and Jimmy. They stayed up here for about a week or two also with us. Jim Pope was the best shot with a rifle I ever saw in my life. He would shoot the heads of doves off flying in the air with a .22 rifle. I can shoot a dove flying with a .22 rifle, but I can't shoot a dove's head off every time with a .22 rifle. He could do that. He had another sister, Ona Mae Remling Stevens, and they owned a liquor store in Bakersfield, California, her and her husband. And she died in 2003. Edna died in 1999, and Earl died in 1989. These people were all my family. Dale had his first son, basically would be me, but he pretty much adopted me. But his first son, birth son, was Gregory. And Gregory stayed with us quite a little bit too. He had another son later in life called Bart, named Bart Remling. He was a farrier. And then me, I went to school here in Fish Lake Valley under Jimmy Remling, not Jimmy Phillips, but Jimmy Remling. He wanted me to carry his name. We lived here. I worked with Dale here several years before my mother moved up. My mother only stayed about a year, and we were going home, and I think in 1960 or 59, and basically she went down to Bakersfield and wouldn't come back. It was in the middle of the winter time. It was in January. So then I had to go to school down there in California. I came back up here with my dad, and we hunted wild horses just about 11 miles straight that way from where I live today. I trained them down here about 1/2 of a mile that way, and we trained them for the ranches. We trained a lot of horses, a lot of mustangs. Dale was a great roper. He was fantastic team roper. He was a world champion Brahma bull rider in the 1940s. He was hooked by a bull in Cow Palace, and the horn went to his back and came out his stomach. And he was being carried around by that bull all over the arena, and he'd already won the ride, but here he was getting killed now. Well, anyway, Slim Pickens and Joaquin Sanchez saved his life. Dale was a man of tremendous amount of talents, just unbelievable. He was a mechanic. He was a horseman, world-class horseman. He even trained the Lipizzan stallions. He trained them in the Michigan College up there. He was a carpenter, a great carpenter. He was a farmer. He was a rancher. He was a welder. He was an electrician. He was a painter. He was an architect. The last house that Buck Owens lived in, Dale drew the architecture for that, and they built that. He was a writer. Dale wrote many short stories and books. I saw them in original manuscripts. He wrote the movie Smokey. Now, he sold the movie because he was a double and he was an extra in the movies. I met a lot of these people that he worked with in the movies. Of course, Slim Pickens and Monty Montana, some of the others that he worked with. I believe he was a double for Dale Robertson because they looked so much alike. He was an inventor. He invented things. He patented things. He patented the saddle rack one time, and he patented the device. If you see him with dairies where they go out there and trim the dairy feet, he patented that machine that you run them into a chute and you flip the cow on its side, and then you could trim its feet. Now, all the dairies have to have this done. And he invented that machine and patented it. He tried to get us, in 1982, he was a part-time outlaw too. But I think he did a lot more good things in his life than he did bad things. He did some bad things. He came out to California, got out of prison, and he had invented these two, the saddle rack, and patented that, and he invented this other thing. He came to a place where I was working at Ace Hydraulic, or not Ace Hydraulic, but Sully and Son. He tried to get Sully to help him and go in partnership building these machines. Well, that didn't happen. When I was at Sullivan, or Ace Hydraulic, he tried to do the same thing there. In the meanwhile, he took off to Colorado, and he was going to build a factory over there to build saddle racks, because that was really, the saddle rack would go into horse trailers and things, and it didn't take much room, fold down and all that. And he had the patent on it. He wrote many books. He even wrote a book on atheism. He wrote the movie Smokey, as I said. And he wrote one called Luna, about the dark side of the moon, where this colony of people, now they've got all kinds of stuff going on, but from this little story that he wrote about Luna. He was an atheist. He wrote a book about atheism until later on in his life, and he became a believer. He was a singer and a musician. He was in the Merchant Marines, and he was in the ROTC program, and he was a bugle boy. And I had another lifelong friend of mine, Walt West, and Dale and him were in the Merchant Marines again, together. When Buck Owens was singing down in Bakersfield at the Blackboard or the Lucky Spot or wherever he was singing down there, I was so big that they kind of mistook me for being grown up, and I was only like 11 and 12 years old when I was going in these bars. Well, anyway, Dale would go in there. Dale did not drink at all. He didn't drink. If he drank a beer, he would be drunk. They used to call him One Beer Remling. I remember up here one time in the winter time, 1958 or 59, something like that. We had a get together here at the community center, which is the darkest when was coming now. It's all abandoned. We got different buildings now. But he went down there and he had one beer, and he got cutting up and singing and dancing and going on. He could dance like Fred Astaire and sang between Frankie Lane and Marty Robbins is what his voice sounded like. When Buck was in the Lucky Spot or the Blackboard or something like that, they'd see Dale coming in, he'd motion him to come up there. He'd come up there and he said, "You're not on the run, are you?" You know, like this. That's the first thing he'd ask him, if he was on the lam or whatever. And he'd tell him no. I'm with Jimmy. Yeah, that's what I always said. He'd always use me as his straight man, kind of, sort of. And Buck would say, he'd get up there and he'd say, "Well, come up and sing for us, Dale. Come up and sing for us." Well, Buck would get him up there and he'd say, "I want you to hear my uncle sing." And they'd say, "Boo, you know, we don't want to hear somebody sing. We want to hear you, Buck." Like this. And he said, "Well, now, guys," he said, "now, just tell me, when he gets up here, you're going to throw rocks at me." And he'd get up there and sing Ghost Riders in the Sky, he'd sing El Paso or something, and the crowd would just be slayed. Just just standing ovations. I remember one time in the 50s up here, we had some Brahma bulls. We would breed the Brahma bulls to the Black Angus cows. Well, they come up to the house and they got to rubbing against the house down there on the Snow Goose Ranch and about knocking the porch down. And Dale got out there and said, "Sick of Mitty, Yukon, get him out of here." They took him and run him down. Mitty came back after about a mile. Yukon ran him all the way down to into Eureka Valley, almost into Saline Valley. We had to get up the next day and go look for the bulls. Yukon was gone. Mitty came back. Yukon was my dog. When you told Yukon to do something, he did it until you told him not to. And he did. We didn't tell him to stop. We weren't there to say, "Leave him alone now, that's good enough." So we went down there and started trailing them and trailing Yukon's tracks, and we went and saw them down there almost to Saline Valley. And so we had to go back and get the horses. And we got the horses, and we took them so far, and then we went on down with the horses, and Dale would always give me a little 38 Smith & Wesson pistol. It was a 38 Smith & Wesson. It was a one that was used in World War II, World War I, and he gave me one bullet in it. And we were going down there around these wild jacks. A wild jack is really mean, a donkey, wild bird. And he'd say, "Well, if the thing tries to climb on you, just shoot him right between the eyes like that, you know." I said, "Dad, I only got one bullet." He said, "You'll never miss. You never miss." I said, "I never shot this gun before." He said, "You'll never miss." He would give me one bullet. When I go rabbit hunting or anything, one bullet. With a 22, one bullet. Anyway, we went down there, and the jacks were there, but they didn't bother, so I didn't have to pull my gun out. And we got Yukon back, and we drove them back. We drove them. It was late at night, like way dark, way dark. It was 11 or 12 o'clock at night, maybe 1 o'clock, maybe when we got home. And all the time we were coming here, and Dale was singing "Ghost Riders in the Sky" and El Paso. I would never, ever stop hearing his voice across that prairie we were going across. Touched my heart so much. I just love the man. I don't know what I'd have done without him in my life. He was rough on me. But then he finally appreciated me, and later on in life, you know, he did a lot of bad things. But he did a lot of good things that people didn't know about. I did. He helped people. They were just failing, and he'd help them. He'd go work. Of course, I worked with him. He'd build horse corrals, and he'd put in leash lines and septic tanks. We did it all by hand. He'd do it and just walk off and say, "Good, feed me a dinner," or something, you know. He was a veterinarian and about a halfway doctor. My mother got sick up here, and we had to go over there to Bishop, and of course you couldn't run from here in the 1950s to Bishop every day to get a shot. That's impossible. It's almost a whole day trip, or we'd go over and stay all night on the side of the road and come on home. It would be a 2-day thing going to Bishop. Well, he gave my dad a bunch of medicine and syringes and everything back then, and then you had to, back in those days, they weren't throwaways. You had to put them and boil them on the water and put alcohol, whatever, clean them all up, you know, make sure they were sanitary, and had to give my mother shots. About 1958 or 59, we were up here in Trail Canyon. We were mustanging. We'd catch wild mustangs and train them and make good cow horses out of them. And we were up there, and I got in early running the horses to the traps. And so I went down there and I was fishing, because there were some big trout in that. You've seen that creek there, Maryland, that Trail Creek. And there was some big trout in there. While I was trying to fish and trying to get them in the right spot, well, I got a treble hook in my finger. And I took out, I always carried a snakebite kit, and I had a scalpel in it, and I tried to cut that thing out. I tried to cut it out, I had blood all over me. And I saw my dad coming off the top of that mountain on a horse, just straight down that mountain. And I didn't know whether he was going to give me a whooping when I got there, or what was going to happen. But he came down that mountain on that horse. The horseshoes were gone by the time he come down that mountain, straight down that mountain. Yeah, I've shown you, Maryland, where that, just straight down that mountain. From about 12,000 feet down to 9,000, whatever it was, there at the trailhead. When I got down there, I was crying because I was in trouble. And he said, "What's wrong, Jimmy?" And I said, he said, oh, he looked at that. He said, "Son, there's only one way to get that out of there." He said, "I can't do it." He said, "I can't do it." He said, "I can't hurt you like that. I just can't do it." He said he went and got some cutters, some dikes, what's it called. He said, "Cut both hooks off on the other two, and then pull that hook all the way through your finger, and then cut the tip off, and then pull it back." I'd cut myself half to pieces trying to get that thing out of there. Trying. I couldn't pull it out. It wouldn't come out. I did it just like he did. He said, "Boy, you're brave. Tough." He said, "I couldn't do that." Well, he was a good veterinarian. I saw him operate on cattle. We've done everything together, castrating horses and cattle and everything. But he couldn't pull that hook out of my finger because he didn't want to hurt me, even though I needed it done. He was a great pilot. He was an airplane pilot. He would come and pick me up sometimes, and we'd go out there, and he had this airplane. He had got married and had this little boy, and he bought a brand new Lincoln Continental, and he bought a real fancy horse trailer, the Lincoln Continental he pulled it with, and he had this horse called Everglade Cougar Track, what his name was, and he was in the top 10 in the world in 6 months with that horse, going and showing him all over, just whipping everybody. We worked with Harry Rose, and we trained Lucky Buck and Johnny Tibio, and then Monty Roberts went and stole Johnny Trivio from Harry Rose. That's what made him, was that horse. Anyway, Dale was just the most talented man that I've ever known. I just worshiped the ground he walked on. And today I finished burying him. On the front of this video here, you're going to see me out there digging the hole by myself, and like to broke my wrist with an auger. It's a power auger. I had to mow all the not tumbleweeds, but all the sagebrush down first. I didn't show you I did all that stuff, but it was quite a job, but I got it done, and my dad is buried. I did 2 services for him, one there in Oildale where Edna was, and then I did one up there in the mountains. We went up there off Breckenridge Road, and I dug a hole up there and buried most of his ashes there. And then I put a rock and put DOR on it with, I think, with fingernail polish that you had, Marilyn. I put it on top of that where his ashes were. But I kept the box that the ashes were in and the rest of the ashes. I couldn't stand not burying my dad, even though he was an outlaw. You know, they say, well, he wouldn't want to be buried any place where people could find him. But I'm going to tell you something, he did a lot of good things. And I was there when he did them too. I had people write me letters and saying that he saved their lives financially and helping them, building barns and stables and working for free on their farms and ranching with them and things back in Michigan and all over. People loved him. And some people hated him. His family were my family. Billy, Buford, and Phyllis. Phyllis was something else. That's Buck Owens' wife. Like I said, she had Jackie and she had Terry and she had Johnny Dale. All of them carried Buck's name. You go down to her house and she'd be out there walking on her hands in the front yard. When she moved up on Panorama, I come up there and visit with them, and she wanted this. She just absolutely just fall all over herself waiting on you and want to make you a banana split or some kind of. But they had a soda fountain in there, and ice cream fountain, and she wanted to make something for you. And Johnny Dale was little. Last time I saw Buck, I was out at the Kern County Fairgrounds at a gun show, And he saw me and he said, "Jimmy," he said, and he introduced me to his girlfriend. And Johnny Dale was there. And he said, "Jimmy," he said, "how long have you known me?" I said, "Since Johnny Dale was born." I said, "He was a baby." I said, "Remember when he got into the cockroach open and ate it, you had to take him to the hospital?" He laughed a little bit. "Yeah," he said, "See there, I got a memory." You know, like that, he still can remember. He had some strokes and things. My sister Margaret, when Dale was in prison, she wrote back and forth to him all the time. I attribute a lot of my learning from my dad. I'm American Indian, and I looked Indian back then. I mean, I looked full blood, which I nearly am. And he kind of put me down a lot, being an Indian. But later on in life, I wrote a letter to him when he was in Jackson, Michigan prison. And I told him, I said, "I think God wants me to preach." And so he wrote a letter back and kind of discouraged me. He said, "Well, Jimmy," he said, "you better study the Bible in the original language, because the Bible wasn't written in English like that." So I was studying Greek and Hebrew, and I would write him letters, and I'd put Greek quotes in the Bible in Hebrew, and write it out, and do all the translations, everything below it. And boy, he was proud of me. He really liked that. He was really proud of me. And like I said, and later on in life, they asked Dale, "Well, what did you do that really was, what did you ever do that was good?" He didn't finish a lot of things that he started. And he'd say, I raised Jimmy. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't know what I'd done if it hadn't been for my dad, Dale. Had a lot of stepdads. But he was the only one that took me with him. He fed me, he clothed me. When I was born, my mother gave me away when I was 1 day old to my grandmother. My grandmother and my great-grandmother raised me until Dale came along. He was rough on me, but I learned so much from him. And finally he realized, one time we were working, training horses out at Tony Saunders' place out there off of Cottonwood Road. It was a stable out there. He was an engineer for Santa Fe Railroad. And we were training horses out there, building. I was building horse corrals. Marilyn, you saw all the horse corrals I built. I built about 20 horse corrals. And all of them were 15-foot railroad ties that I put in the ground, and they're still standing. Everything else is rotted, but those ties are still standing there like a forest. I went out there, and I'd work hard for my dad. And he'd always call me a dumb Indian. "Come over here, you dumb Indian." And I would just do whatever he wanted, exactly like he wanted me to do it, exactly. One day they went out there, they had the Gray Ghost, which was a great bucking horse at one time. And one of his friends got on, and they were drunk. Dale wasn't drunk, but they were drunk. They got out there and got to running the cattle. They got to trying to make that horse buck, and was abusing him, and Tony got mad, real mad. Anyway, so he went out there, and him and Dale got into it Monday morning. And Dale said he wouldn't allow that to happen anymore. And he said, "One more thing I want to tell you about this, Mr. Remling." He said, "That boy that you got there, Jimmy," he said, that Indian boy. He said, "He's not a dumb blanket-assed Indian like you call him a lot of times. That boy is brilliant, and he does everything. He worships the ground you walk on." And he said, "He does most of the work around here and rides all the rough horses. Whatever you tell him to do, he does it." He said, "Anything you give him," he said, "you better start paying that boy." And he said, "I don't want to hear you call him a dumb Indian one more time." He said, "My wife was Indian, and she wasn't dumb either." Well, he encouraged me to study Greek and Hebrew. And I'll tell you what, when I went into high school, the first day I went to high school, I had $385 in my wallet that he had given me for working. Somebody stole it. I went from here to Bakersfield High School with 50-some odd hundred people, and they broke in there and took. I had a diamond wedding ring that I carried, and my pocket knife and $300 and something in my wallet and everything, and all of it was gone. But that money I used. A lot of times Dale wouldn't have a dime on him, and we go off someplace. He traded for Marilyn's dad's car. She had a, what was it, 55 or 56 Packard. And one time we went up there and he got it from Tony, another guy that we had put a septic system in, help him do his yards and everything. We put fences up, we put septic system and lease line in there, all of that. For free. Dale did that with me working for free too. But anyway, he got this Packard from that Marilyn's dad had traded in down in LA someplace. And it was a beautiful car. Well, we were coming down 99 freeway, which was Old Union Avenue now. And we run out of gas out there. We're running out of gas. Pulled into the service station. And Dale had given his world champion bull riding belt to Billy Buford, which is Phyllis's brother, Mildred's son. Buck Owens' brother-in-law. And I wanted that belt buckle so bad, and when I got it, it had a gold bull in it one time. And anyway, it had knocked it out there at Goodmanville where Dale was roping, and couldn't find the gold bull anymore, so he gave it to Billy. Well, I traded Billy a belt buckle for it, and I put a silver dollar in it. I still have that in another room. If I thought about it, I'd have shown it to you. Anyway, 3 times we ran out of gas. I had to unsolder my belt buckle, silver dollar in it, and finally I got one and I put a Mexican silver dollar in it, and I saw it file the face off out of it. And I left that thing in there until I grew up, and nobody. One time Dale sent me with Sonny, and Sonny ran out of gas out on Cottonwood Road, and I had to unsolder my belt buckle, my silver dollar out of the belt buckle to get gasoline. You could get a tank of gasoline back then for $1. Anyway, these are some of the stories. We lived up here in Fish Lake Valley in the summer up here in Trail Canyon, like Indians, so to speak. That's Hank Patterson used to say. And my stepdad married one of Hank's daughters. I think it was Dorothy. They were married for about 3 years. Hank always wanted me to marry one of his granddaughters or something because I was part of his family. I buried my dad today within 10, 15 feet of Hank Patterson. When I'm buried, I'll be about 6 or 8, 10 feet from him. Dorothy is down there about 30 or 40, maybe 75 feet away. I was poisoned with propane, oxygen deprivation, everything. It has done a tremendous detrimental to my health. I've been wanting to bury my dad and put him someplace and put a headstone on his grave. So that's where my dad, at least part of his ashes and his box are there. You'll see the box on this video, the first part of the video. I thank God that I could do that today, even though I almost broke my wrist with that power auger. Johnny, Dale, Jackie, all of my family, Carol, Jimmy, all of you, I hope that I've done my dad's service in doing what I've done tonight. I did the best I could there at that mobile home park in 1999 in July. I did my best up on that hill where I put DOR on his rock, and today I gave him an official burial in Section 2, Number 10 in Fish Lake Valley Cemetery, and we will get a headstone on him. I want my dad to be buried, at least part of him, to where he has a marker for his grave. May have been an outlaw, part-time, but he was a great man in my life. Father, I just thank you for the time to be able to do this, for the health to be able to go and bury my dad. I know he made a profession of faith late in his life. I pray that he's with you. He meant so much to me. I don't know what I'd have done, being raised up with a bunch of drunk Indians. Maybe I'd been like one if it hadn't been for him in my life. Thank you for that. Please forgive me where I failed you. And all of you out there in the rest of the world, there are so many untruths written about my dad. I wrote an article on one area there, and I told about his life a little bit. A lot of people have written me letters and emails since then, thanking me for what I did and telling me what he did in their lives for them that I didn't even know about. I know a lot of things. I trained horses with him. I lived up here and I cooked up here in Trail Canyon. He let me cook. I like cooking, and he let me cook. And I cooked mostly beans and fried eggs. But thank you for watching. I hope this settles this. I buried my dad for the last time today.